Welcome back to the Free Code Camp podcast, your source for raw, unedited interviews with developers. Today, we're talking with Edidiong Asikpo. Didi is a software engineer. She grew up in Lagos, the biggest city in Nigeria and the biggest tech hub in Africa. Didi got into medical school, but while she was waiting for her studies to start, she started studying computer science at a local school, and she got really into it. She graduated with a CS degree a few years later and has worked in tech for nearly a decade. She now works at MongoDB, a cloud database company, remotely from her home in London. Edidiong Asikpo, welcome to the Free Code Camp podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, and of course your friends all call you Didi. Didi Codes is what you're known as on social media. So I will be calling you Didi throughout the interview. That's cool with you.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So first of all, I know that you have gone through a lot of transitions as a developer over the years. You were an Android dev, and then you switched to web dev, and now you're doing more DevOps engineering type work. What has been the single hardest thing for you to learn along the way in terms of like specific skills or technologies?
That's an interesting question. I think I would say Kubernetes, to be honest. I think it was like a never-ending thing to learn, right? I remember when I joined this company, and then one of the things I really had to work on was like Kubernetes. I had to get up to speed as quickly as possible. So today I'm like, oh my God, I know this thing about Kubernetes. I'm currently learning about pods, and I'm so happy that I now understand how pods in Kubernetes work. And just when you feel like you've got to this, you now realize, oh no, you need to learn about services too. So I go and I'm like, okay, fine, I need to learn about services because it's built on pods. And then you realize there's like an extra thing around like the other networking and like being able to push stuff to production or setting up a CI/CD pipeline. So it was never ending, to be honest. And I think it also really just reminded me about like this quote that I read one time where it says, the more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know, right? It felt like the more I knew about Kubernetes, the more I felt like, oh my God, there's still so much more to know. But it was quite fun. At the end of the day, when you get the concept and how things mix together, it's very exciting. Like being in your terminal, writing up Kubernetes, kubectl commands, tweaking things here and there. It used to make me feel like a someone who's like editing stuff and like doing some hacking behind the scenes. So that was very, very fun. But it was quite challenging in the beginning.
Yeah. And since you are a very capable technical writer, and since you've written hundreds of tutorials over the years probably on programming topics, can you maybe on the spot, can you explain what Kubernetes is and why it's useful and like why DevOps use it?
Makes sense. So let me use this real life example. Because I write technical articles a lot, I've come to see that using real life examples can make people really understand concepts. So I know different people call it different things. In Nigeria, where I'm from, we call it football, but I know in like most places they call it soccer, right? So imagine
in the US, I think maybe the US is one of the only places where it's called soccer.
Actually, you're correct. So it's just the US that calls it soccer.
Because we have like American football. So we call it, we call American football, and we call football soccer.
That's so weird. I remember when I learned about it, I was like, oh, the US again. But anyway, so think of like a football team, right? Football teams typically have like 11 players, for instance, and these football teams typically have someone called a coach. And the whole concept or essence of this coach is to direct the football team on what to do. Like, hey, this person should be the defender. This should be the one like tracking the ball. This should be the one, let's say, protecting the goalpost or something like that. So now imagine that these players are containers, like containers of your application that like is like your code, right? That you've built and then push it into a container.
Yeah, like a Docker container.
Exactly, like a Docker container, for instance. Thank you. And then imagine that this coach is Kubernetes, which pretty much directs these containers on how to act or what to do. So imagine, let's say, one of the players in the football match has an injury, and then the coach will be the one to remove that player and replace them with somebody else. So in the world of Kubernetes, if one of the containers stops working or fails, Kubernetes has to remove that container and replace it with another container that is functioning. So think of Kubernetes as that coach that manages these different containers or players, so to speak, to ensure that they do what they need to do at the right time and they're consistently functioning to give users the like the application or user interface or experience that they want and deserve.
Support for this podcast comes from a grant from Wix Studio. Wix Studio provides developers tools to rapidly build websites with everything out of the box, then extend, replace, and break boundaries with code. Learn more at wixstudio.com. Support also comes from the 11,189 kind folks who support Free Code Camp through a monthly donation. You can join these chill human beings and help our charity's mission by going to donate.freeCodeCamp.org. Okay, awesome. So essentially, if I can recap your explanation, so that's a great analogy. The coach, a player gets injured, maybe they're playing like the striker position or something like that, and you need to bring in one of the people who also is good at striking or something, or good enough, and make decisions about how to like redistribute the load. Essentially, so a lot of like the kind of like the logistics of actually serving an application when you have lots of servers. Which, you know, if you're serving anything big, you're going to have a lot of servers, right? And then, you know, Docker, we mentioned, is kind of a way of like making sure that every single server has like a certain, like the code state is preserved with like Docker images and putting those onto containers. And so, okay, cool. So that's helpful for me because like I've never actually worked directly with Kubernetes. We use it at Free Code Camp because we have like 100 different servers around the world to make sure we have good uptime. Nice. 99.99. We don't go any higher than that because it gets very expensive. But we do that. But I'm personally, I don't have firsthand experience, so that's helpful for me
that's
as
a
dev who doesn't do a lot of DevOps. And DevOps is like development operations. It's just it's just like an expression people use for
an acronym, so to speak, mixing up both of them together. Because I mean, previously we used to have like different teams. Software developers just focused on writing code, and then we had like the operations people who would like help with like deploying the application and ensuring that it's available for different users in like the production environment. And as microservices came into the play, developers now had to take on some of that responsibilities of the like operating team, right? So that's where they now merged it up together. So we do have software developers who have the knowledge of writing code, of course, but then also being able to like deploy that code into production environments as well. So that's how the combination of the word DevOps came about. Yeah,
so it's kind of like Blade. He's like half human, half vampire. He can do both.
That's a very good analogy, actually. Yes.
Awesome. So I want to learn more about you because you know, you've worked as a dev for like the past 10 years, and my understanding is you have like a pretty interesting journey into tech. You know, of course, you grew up in Nigeria, which is, you know, a huge country, and you moved to Lagos, and you went to school there. And Lagos is basically like the Silicon Valley of Africa. Is kind of how I look at it. It is like the major tech hub, and many of the best developers in Africa are in Lagos. And many of the most ambitious, you know, tech startup type people are like in Lagos. And it sounds like a really interesting place to kind of like start your journey into tech. Maybe you can take us back and feel free to go back as far as you want. Talk about your childhood, but like I just want to learn more about your journey into, you know, you're currently working as a dev and a developer advocate, kind of like a hybrid like developer and like kind of developer education type role. Obviously, you have a long history of writing tutorials, and that's been a big part of, I guess, how you're so well known among developers, because people probably read your tutorials all the time. But maybe you can take us back to that early period of your life.
Absolutely. So I did plan on studying computer science when I grew up. So I grew up in Nigeria, and I don't know if you know this, but like there is this stereotype or concept that African parents have where they expect their children to either become medical doctors, lawyers, or bankers, because at the time that was the three most popular fields. So my father wanted me to become a medical doctor, and I remember sharing how, no, I didn't want to do this. I wanted to become a petrochemical engineer. And then he was like, I think I had this uncle who studied petrochemical engineering as well, who didn't really do well in life. So he would now use that uncle and be like, "Hey, look at my brother here. He didn't do well in this field, so I believe that he should study medicine and surgery." And because of how like our culture is built, you cannot necessarily go against your parents, so to speak, right? Because they're the ones paying for your fees, and when you go against them, it kind of feels like you're insulting them, so to speak. So things are very different, like the African culture versus, let's say, the US culture. So I had to listen to my father, and I was like, cool, let me apply to go into medical school. So I did that whole process. I got into medical school, but then I had to wait for a year before I resumed school officially. And I didn't want to do that. Like, I was very young, very excited. I wanted to go into school immediately and just do what I needed to do. So it kind of felt like this was an opportunity for me to do something else other than what my dad wanted me to do. So I looked up some private schools in the area that still had openings. And then I saw this school, the name was Renaissance University, and they had a opening for computer science. For context, at the time, I actually didn't know people could go to university to study computer science. I did know of computer engineering as a course, but I just thought computer science was like one of those things you study as a computer engineer, so to speak. So I applied to study computer science because I really used to like computer studies when I was in high school. So I just thought, okay, it would just be as easy as it was back then. So I write the exams for this school, I get into the school, and I started studying computer science. But lo and behold, it was not as easy as it was when I was in high school. I don't know if it was a mixture of me underestimating what I had to do to be able to like stay up to speed, or if it was the lack of sync between myself and the lecturers, but things were not just clicking for me. It felt like I oftentimes had to just like cram the code that they were writing or what the teacher was trying to say just so I could pass the exams. Like I wasn't really getting it as much as I wanted to. But what actually changed for me was when I went for this internship in my third level. So in Nigeria, we have this thing where if you're a science student in your 300 level, which is the third level, you have to go and work at a company for 6 months to get an experience of what life would be like when you eventually graduate. So think of it like an internship, so to speak. So I went to do an internship at this company called Start Innovation Hub. And that was when I started working as an Android developer intern. So I was more or less learning Android development, but then also contributing as an intern to this application called Jiggle, which was written in Java. Yeah.
Okay. Java app, the dreaded Java.
Yeah. It was,
Were you learning Java? Was that the main language of instruction at your university?
No, at my university, I did teach us like several things, but not popular ones. I remember we did Fortran. I remember we did something around like PHP, then a little bit of like Java, right? Okay. But so what really moved me towards doing Java at that internship was because I really used to like the Facebook application so much. Like Facebook used to be my dream company, so to speak. So I had a choice between choosing web development or Android development. And then I was like, no, I want to build my own Facebook someday. So let me learn how to develop an Android application and go towards that path. That was one of the things that drew me towards Android development. So it was in this place that I actually feel like I got the spark of software engineering. Like now, finally, things started to make sense to me. Like I could really like write code and know. Like I could explain what that code was. It wasn't just me cramming to pass on exams, right? It's like I could now build Android applications. And I remember I would connect my laptop to my phone to run the application on my phone. And then I would click on the app and see that I would just be so excited that I built that thing. Like it was mesmerizing, so to speak. I couldn't believe that I could now be at a point where I could build something. It wasn't the best Android application, but it was something, and it made me so happy and so proud of myself. And I think I would say it was in that moment and that experience that I actually decided that, okay, fine, I'm going to give software engineering an actual shot. Not necessarily because I studied computer science, because prior to doing that internship, it just wasn't clicking the way that I wanted it to be.
So were you still at this point considering like, I could still go to medical school? Like you were basically using this, like, I've got a year, I'm waiting around for a spot to get into medical school.
Yes.
Might as well try this computer science thing.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So you were still up to this point when it clicked at this internship, you were still kind of probably going to go to medical school?
Yeah, so the thing was, so after I did like the 100 level, right? I mean, I did, so the thing was, I liked, when I started studying that, I liked computer science, like, I liked what they were doing, but I just wasn't understanding it, right? So like my issue was, I didn't understand it as much as I wanted to. And the way my brain works is I like to really break things down, so like the concept where it makes sense to me. So when it doesn't, it just feels like it's hovering over my head, so to speak. So as I
kind of like a dark cloud, like
yes.
that feeling of like it really sucks that I don't understand how this works, and like how can I fix it?
Yes, like how can I fix it? How can I become better at this? Because I really wanted to. So at like in my 100 level, I now had a conversation with my dad, like towards the end, because when the 100 level ended, I was supposed to now move to the medical school that I'd gotten into. But at the time, I just had a conversation with my dad. I said, hey, I really like it here. I think it would be great for me. Again, I wasn't sure. It's not like I had figured out software engineering at the time. I was still very confused about a lot of things, but I thought it would give me a really good shot at life compared to medicine and surgery, because I actually really didn't like blood or having to take medication or being with people. So I just like pitched it to my father, like, oh my God, this thing is where the future is. But for context, I personally did not even have all of that planned out. So finally he agreed for me to like continue in the university. So that was why I was under a lot of pressure to actually really understand this thing, because I literally convinced my dad from having a medical doctor in his family to studying computer science. So I had to do well at the end of the day. So doing this internship and now finally understanding tech was so exhilarating for me. It was like, oh my God, okay, finally I think there's actually a chance for me to become a software engineer. And I would say from that moment things began to like change for me. Of course, there's like a lot more that has happened since then, but I would say starting from like wanting to study medicine to that moment was the fundamental of like my journey into the tech ecosystem.
Yeah. And like, I can imagine the pressure you must have felt having your dad who had all these expectations. How many daughters does he have? How many kids?
So he has like 4 daughters. I'm like the second child. And at the time, all of my other siblings, like people after me, were like really, really young. So I was like the only person in the university at the time, right? So it felt like there was a lot of pressure for me to meet expectations, for me to show him how amazing this computer science thing I talked about was, in defiance to his recommendation of medicine and surgery. Because again, African parents are more like they want to tell you, I told you so. Do you understand? They want to tell you, why didn't you do this thing that I told you to do, right? So you're almost like working to show them that you were right all along, so to speak. So that pressure contributed.
Yeah, man. Well, so I mean, he's got 4 daughters, and you're the only daughter who's in university, essentially.
Yeah.
So there's like a tremendous amount of pressure on you to like not let him down, not disappoint him. Again, I don't know a lot about Nigerian culture or anything like that, but as a parent, I'd be kind of disappointed if I had the opportunity to have like a really successful kid, and then like my kid went into some random subject I don't personally know a lot about. I'm like, is this even like a thing? Do people care about software? You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
so
that's exactly how it was at the time. I mean, now Nigeria and like is known as the top place for tech. But back then, if there were 100 people in Nigeria, just 5 people knew about tech. So nobody cared about it. Nobody thought it was amazing. And especially people of like his age did not even know that this stuff existed or cared about it. So it was a lot of risks to take, but I'm really glad that I did that, and like how my life has ended up at the moment.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk a lot more about your life since then, but I want to pause to talk a little bit about the actual environment you were in Lagos, and how you said like a lot of people just didn't realize how big of a deal tech would ultimately become for Nigerian people. And you were there, during that transition where you said like maybe 5 out of 100 people would actually appreciate the importance of technology. And to now where, you know, it's kind of like a indisputable thing that like tech is important to Nigeria. It's becoming a major industry, like export, like a lot of Nigerian engineers living both in Nigeria and abroad you're living
Yeah.
in London. I have lots of friends that are living in like Berlin and other places around Europe. I went to run a hackathon the other day, like to judge it, and I was the keynote speaker and everything. And one of my
nice.
fellow judges was from Nigeria, and he
Cool.
worked at like I can't remember the name of the big tech company, but it was a pretty big name brand tech company, and he was doing like site reliability engineering there. And you know, he just said like it's extremely common now. Like he's got a lot of colleagues who are from Nigeria that are working at his company.
That's cool, yeah.
Like it's a major export, like talent export
It
for
is.
Nigeria now, and that happened pretty quickly.
It did, actually. It did. And yeah, like I would say that a lot of things like drove that. One of the things that really began to happen at the time, let's say far back in like 2017, was the introduction of developer communities. So most of these big tech companies like Google and Facebook and Microsoft wanted to have like a presence in Africa, because at the time the big news or big push was always like Africa is the next best place. Africa is where the next best thing is coming out. So it felt like everybody wanted to have a piece of the pie, so to speak. So we had Google, we had Facebook, we had all of those companies coming to open like small branches in Lagos, or yeah, all of them were in Lagos actually. And then they would now host like smaller developer community events in like different other states in Nigeria. So at this community events that would happen, you would go there to learn about like how to use, at the time, Facebook had this stuff called Spark AR, which is augmented reality, where you could build some interesting stuff. That was when React.js became really popular as well, like the whole open source drive and like Facebook being a part of like the React.js community. So that was like another drive as well. Then Google had this community called Google Developer Groups. So they would also teach you things around like Google technologies and trying to implement stuff on yourself. So when you go to this event, you'd see like, let's say, senior software engineer from Google speaking at the event, or some big person in like Facebook talking about tech or trying to encourage you into tech. And those things or those moments were very crucial, because it made people see that they could also become software engineers. They could also become whatever these people were, right? Because they would oftentimes share their journey and their experiences. And one of the key things I really learned at the time was that you should not tie your influence or the impact you have to your location, right? Or your relevance, so to speak. Because sometimes when you look at big places like, let's say, Silicon Valley or like London, and then you look at yourself in like, let's say, Nigeria or any other African or another like third world country, you would often feel like you don't have the same level of like opportunities or potential to grow or become big or become something in life. But it's important that you remember not to tie like your environment to yourself. Like always think and believe that you can dream and like move past whatever seems normal in your environment to something much more bigger. So I remember that was like one thing I always told myself, like, fine, it's okay that I'm in Nigeria, it's fine that I'm not in Silicon Valley. If they could do it, then I can also do it too. There is this quote that Nigerian parents always say, like, let's say you go to school and then you come back and then someone else takes first position in like class, and then you're like fifth or sixth. They would ask you, the person that took first position, do they have two heads? That's like they're trying to say, why could this person take first and you could not take first, right? It's always like trying to compare why someone else could do something and could not do it as well. So it's something that rings very often in the minds of Nigerians, right? And it kind of like encourages us to go after things. There's this tenacity that we have to really go after the things that we want.
Yeah, and that is definitely like, I mean, we have several devs from Nigeria on the freeCodeCamp team, for example. And I talk to Nigerian devs all the time, and that has been like one characteristic that I've seen is just like, why not? Let's do it. You know, if they can do it, I could do it. You know,
Absolutely.
They're just humans. I'm a human. Like what? They don't have like an extra head. They don't have like double the brain power.
Nope. We're all humans. So if anyone can do it, then you can do it too. Yeah, that's one thing I always live by.
Awesome. So you were pretty involved in like some of these early like Google tool user groups and things like that. And so it sounds like you really took advantage of a lot of these opportunities with these big, multinational tech companies coming to Nigeria and using Lagos as kind of like their point of arrival, really, for the entire African continent.
Yeah.
I don't know if is that accurate?
Absolutely, it is. Like, I can think when I look back at my career, like the key moments that changed everything for me all tied to like this interactions with the community, right? It's like going to an event and hearing another Nigerian who is doing great as a software engineer talking or teaching you something, and then you're just like marveled at how much knowledge that they have. So it inspires you to do more. I remember I went for this event a bit early on, and then we had this speaker who was talking about open source and how you can contribute to open source and how it would be beneficial for you and your knowledge and your understanding. So I decided, okay, fine, I'm going to try to contribute to open source as well. So I looked through, I think, what was this thing called? Google Summer of Code.
Yes,
and
very popular challenge that many university students do, and non-university students as well, but like especially university students in my experience. And people are constantly asking, like, does FreeCodeCamp have opportunities for Google Summer of Code? Like, I'd like to get involved and stuff like that. And yes, please reach out to me if you're interested in doing that.
Oh, amazing. That's so great. Yeah, so I found this organization called Open Data Kit. They had this Android application.
Open Data Hacking? Did you say?
Open Data Kit. That's the name
Open
of
Data
it.
Kit. Okay,
yes,
cool.
Yes. So it's like open source organization that had this mobile data collection application, right? So at the time, since I was still doing Android development, I was like, let me try to contribute to this organization. So I went to the GitHub repository, looked for good first bugs, and then started created a pull request to contribute to it. And the reviewer gave like a couple of feedback for me to like implement it. But to this day, I remember when that pull request got merged. It was like one of the best days of my life. Like I was so happy. I couldn't believe that a code contribution that I've made has now been added to an application that is used by thousands of people. So it just felt like contributing to open source gave me room to like get more real world experience and to actually see that, I can actually get a lot better at coding as well, and that my code skills that I had at the time is actually good enough to be able to contribute to open source, which I think is sometimes people are too scared to give something a shot because they feel they don't have all of the knowledge and all of the understanding yet. But I think one of the best ways to learn is also to like go after the things that you're not so sure about yet and just like give it a shot and learn in the process. Like you really learn a lot of things by doing them rather than thinking you are not good enough to even give it a shot. It was so amazing, and it was like one of the fundamental things or changes in my life, like contributing to the open source project, trying out other open source projects, or going to different events as well. Another thing that also really helped me too was like reading like technical articles or free courses. I remember using FreeCodeCamp as well. Like it was so amazing. Like FreeCodeCamp, I remember I would always see Quincy's post about how he believed everybody should be able to learn how to code, and how you didn't need to pay for a course or something, right? Because not everybody has money, to be honest. Some people are struggling to even like feed themselves. So the fact that I could see or had access to FreeCodeCamp, which was free, and also really explain things in like a way that you would understand. Like it was like very detailed, like one step at a time. You move from this step to one step. And then one thing I also really liked as well was the practical session. So it was not just you reading something or trying to understand it. It was you read this thing on FreeCodeCamp and then you have an opportunity to actually type it out and practice it out yourself. And then after you're done with that course, you now build like your actual project, which was also part of like the FreeCodeCamp learning roadmap. So it was one of the things that also motivated me to start writing as well. Because I'm like, if someone wrote this amazing thing and put it out in the world for free and it helped me, then I should also write content as well to like help someone else out in the world that may not understand something or may not have money like I did not have at the time to pay for a course. So yeah.
Well, just to recap, first of all, thanks for your kind words about the FreeCodeCamp community.
Pleasure.
In the show notes, I do have a link to one of the tutorials you published way back in like 2021, which seems like
oh, nice.
But you posted some career advice back then, and you posted a few times like thoughtful tutorials. sounds like leveraging the fact that there are these communities that are out there taking advantage of like Google Summer of Code type challenges, getting involved in different user groups and like what we colloquially refer to in the US as like meetups. And then, of course, getting involved in open source. And congratulations on getting that pull request merged. And thank you for being a contributor to open source. So those were all important kind of milestones and accelerants of your rise as a dev.
Absolutely.
And before we get into the rest of your career, I do want to just get like practical tips for how to get into open source. Like if somebody has never contributed to open source before, they have no idea where to start, what would be your advice to them?
I would say, first of all, identifying what you want to do. Gone are those days where people believe that, open source, contributing to open source had to be just coding. If you're a technical writer, you're a designer, you're a program manager, or even a software engineer as well, there's several rooms for you to contribute to open source, right? Just wanted to put that out there. But focusing on software engineering as like the case study here, if you want to contribute to open source, one of the things I would advise that you go to github.com and search your programming language. It could be Python, it could be JavaScript, and then you'll be able to see all of the different open source projects that are built off that particular programming language. And if you click on them, you'll be able to read, okay, what are these open source projects about? If you find anyone that is interesting to you, then you go to their issues. So issues, there's something called an issues tab on GitHub. Typically, that's where people send in like issues that need to be solved, or the maintainers of that project put issues that need to be solved. So if you want to pick any of them, what you do is you can either like drop a comment tagging the maintainer saying, hey, I want to work on this project, and then they would assign you to it. Not some open source project you can just like assign yourself automatically, but most often than not, you have to kind of like have a conversation with the maintainer of the project, because they want to ensure that everything is moving smoothly, and they're also helping out people who are not very knowledgeable about the open source project. Some organizations also have this thing called good first bugs, which are like tags they add to some issues. So if you're a new person, I recommend you check out those good first bugs. They're very beginner friendly, very more straight to the point. So if you click on those ones, you drop a comment, one of the maintainers is going to respond and give you the go ahead and add you as assign you to that issue. And once you've written the code to solve the issue, you create a pull request. And again, oftentimes there's an automated stuff set up that is going to automatically assign one of the maintainers to the pull request that you've created. So they'll be able to give you feedback on it, on like what you need to change, code changes you need to make, maybe some feedback on like your commits and stuff like that. And once it reaches the point that the maintainer thinks it's good enough to be merged into the code repository, then they're going to merge it. And I promise you, it's going to feel so good. Like, you're going to feel so good, and it would be very motivating as well. One thing I would also say is for people who do not have like real world experience, right? Like you're maybe still like in the learning phase, and you've not had the opportunity to work with a company before. Contributing to open source projects is one of the great ways to get real life experiences, or like to get to contribute to like a real world project, so to speak, like a project that other people are using, and it's not necessarily you just building an application based off a tutorial. Like you're actually contributing to like a product or like a product that's being used by people. And sorry, before I finish, I just remembered one very interesting thing that happened early on in my career tied to open source contributions. So I applied to this company called InterSwitch. It is one of the second unicorn in Africa, one of the biggest fintech companies in Africa.
Yeah, fintech, like financial technology, unicorn meaning like a company that has a valuation of $1 billion or greater. That's the definition here in the US.
Yes,
it's called? What did you say?
InterSwitch.
InterSwitch.
Yes. Okay. So I applied for a software engineering role at InterSwitch, and at the time I'd done the algorithm interviews, I'd met with the CTO. So during this interview with the CIO, that's the Chief Information Officer, one of the questions he asked was at the time, like, I mean, I'd already done my internship at Start Innovation Hub. So this was like my first company that I was going to work for after I'd graduated from university. So technically, like, as outside of the internship, right, which was part of like the university um curriculum that I had to do, this was like going to be my first full-time job as a software engineer. So I remember he asked me in my CV, I'd written how I'd made some API contributions to MediaWiki. And for context, MediaWiki is the open source organization that powers Wikipedia, which is the free encyclopedia. So I'd made some like contributions to their Python APIs. So I added that to my CV, and he asked me, "Oh, hey, you made open source contributions to these organizations, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." He now said, "When was the last time you contributed to open source?" And thankfully, I had just made one contribution to open source that morning before the interview. So I was
Wow.
like, "Yeah." I was like, I told him, "Oh, I made one this morning." He asked me to tell him about it, and then I explained how I wrote like the created like the Python APIs for the Wikipedia product, and how I'd also worked on the documentation for the API. Just really pretty much explaining like the whole process of what I did. And he was so impressed. Like, it was like, "Oh, nice, cool." Because one of the things the company wanted to work on was improving the developer experience of like their APIs, right? And they needed a software engineer to focus on that particular aspect of their company. So contributing to this open source project was one of the key things that landed me that role. And if I had no open source contributions, well, I don't know, I most likely would have not gotten the shot that I got into that company. And yeah, so open source contributions are fantastic for software engineers.
Yeah, I mean that's like the best possible answer to like, oh, when was the last time you did XYZ? Oh, I did it this morning. And guess what? It's not just, don't take my word for it. This is public record. You can go on GitHub. You can see the PR. You can see exactly the code changes I suggested. This is one of the things that I tell people all the time. People complain about it. It takes a job to get a job or whatever. Like complaining about that kind of like experience trap, if you want to call it that. Like where you're like, you don't have qualifications, so you can't get the job, but you can't get the qualifications without getting a job.
Yeah,
open
like
source is
chicken
there.
and egg scenario.
Yeah, open source is like a great on-ramp for all the reasons you just said. And I just want to recap your advice. Go on GitHub. Just start searching for like languages that you have competence in, tools you have competence in. See if you can find some projects that use those tools. Check their bugs. Check their GitHub issues. And a lot of projects like FreeCodeCamp use good first issue or good first bug or help wanted. They use these different tags, and these are designed specifically by the maintainers. They're set aside by the maintainers to give people an on-ramp into contributing to their community, to their code base, because it's hard to grok a giant code base.
It is.
Like, I mean, and I always tell people like working with open source is the closest simulation you're going to get to actually working in like a distributed like software development team at a company.
Absolutely. Spot on.
Yeah. Most of the communication is going to be done through text, through like notes on, a GitHub issue, for example, or a pull request. Code review is going to be done through GitHub or they may be using some other tools. But like then you go work at the company and they're using like Jira or something like that, but it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, here's a problem. Okay, here's a potential solution. Let's talk about that solution. Let's get more clarity on that problem. Okay, we fixed it. Like people have this weird, like they think the world is extremely complicated because the world is extremely complicated. But at the end of the day, a lot of software engineering is pretty simple in the sense that you have a bug, and you're trying to figure out what caused that bug and you're trying to fix it. Then you're trying to, then there's like the whole DevOps thing that you're doing now of getting that fixed into production and making sure everything works and all that stuff. But I just want to highlight the fact that like open source doesn't have to be super intimidating or super hard. Yep. Lots of organizations are trying to make it as easy as possible for people to get involved.
Absolutely. And that's so cool. Like, it's so nice when organizations try to make things easy or easier rather for people who are relatively new to the field. It just gives you that extra encouragement and advantage. And I would also say that most of the open source maintainers that I've interacted with are like the nicest people, the most patient people. Like they're oftentimes helping you walk through that journey. So if it's something you've not tried before, I'll definitely recommend that you do.
Yeah, and be sure to be nice to them, because a lot of open source maintainers are doing it out of the kindness of their heart. They're working as devs at other companies, and it's just like a side passion to run some, tool that does XYZ for X, platform, or some sort of integration, or maybe they have a big open source, tool like freeCodeCamp. I mean, it's essentially a tool for learning, right? And it's maintained not just by open source contributors, but we do have a staff. Like, I'm paid. A lot of people on the staff are paid. But you go to a lot of projects and it's just 100% like a passion project. And so do be mindful when interacting with maintainers that they are doing this because they feel it's their calling. They're helping you, not necessarily because they couldn't just do it themselves, but they want to kind of pay it forward in the community and help get more devs into the community. That's why people create first timers, like good first issue, first timer only, those tags. Like, they could solve it themselves. When you create a first timer issue, you already know how to solve it, and you could just go and fix it real quick. But this is an opportunity. This is a teachable moment for somebody else to come in and like get that glory.
Yeah, it's so incredible, really. Yeah.
And
selfless.
The culture around software is very different from the culture in a lot of other fields. Like, there's this kind of default to abundance. Like, software engineers have this mindset that like code is infinitely reproducible. Software, like, to an extent, wants to be free. And that's why there's free open source software, and why the world gradually moves to it. And free open source software is kind of like the apex predator for any tool. Like, if you're Oracle and you've got your precious databases, and then like there are all these open source databases that are coming out that are like, you're like, I've got to cling to my cash flow. I've got investors to be accountable toward. And at the end of the day, like, pretty much every software company ultimately has to compete with open source.
True. Right? In one way or the other. True.
Yeah. And what is open source? It's just millions of developers who care about there being a free version that is more secure by virtue of it being open source. Anyway, I'll stop waxing poetically about open source software, but obviously it's something that's been a huge part of my life, and I'm thrilled that it's been a big part of your life. So take us back to InterSwitch. You just impressed the heck out of the CIO. So you get the job.
Yep. I got the job. It was very exciting. This was like my first big job as a software engineer, and it was InterSwitch was, like I said, like at the time it was the biggest fintech companies. Now we have a lot more interesting fintech companies in Nigeria and Africa, but it was a testament to putting in the work, because like I said, at the beginning of like my career, when I started studying computer science and all, like, learning how to code or understanding code wasn't something that necessarily came very easy to me. Like, I was oftentimes confused half of the time, but over time I realized that the reason why it felt like I didn't understand it was because I wasn't giving myself enough time to learn it. Like, I was always trying to move so quickly. There was no patience at all. But when I really calmed down to learn how to write code, then it started to click for me. And the important thing is always like giving it time and also doing it consistently. And I've heard a couple of people say, coding is not for me. And I get you, because I said that as well. Like, there was a time in my life where I felt like coding wasn't for me because I didn't understand it. I'm like, every other person who understood how to code probably just, maybe they were born with the knowledge, or something specifically happened to them that made them understand it. So I've also been in that shoe before. But what really does the trick is giving it as much time as possible, and also doing it consistently, so it now begins to feel natural to you. So after going through all of that process, continuing to improve my skill, learning through like free resources, because I didn't have the money at the time to use any paid one, getting this job at InterSwitch felt like it was such a huge moment. It's like, oh wow, okay, you were actually able to like get this going. And it doesn't mean that when you get to that point, you have to like stop. I think that's a very interesting thing about software engineering. Like, you have to continuously learn, like, to improve your skills, like be better in where you're in. So working at InterSwitch was like quite interesting. Worked as a software engineer on the developer console, because one of the things we wanted to do was to try to like merge the different APIs that InterSwitch had into like something consolidated. work on like a documentation to ensure that third-party developers that were using InterSwitch's APIs had like a better experience using it. So that was really, really nice. And one of the things that made me transition to DevOps was I used to sit down close to this DevOps engineer. His name is Abdul, and I would remember when like people would come to him and be like, "Oh my God, Abdul, QuickTeller is one of InterSwitch's products. QuickTeller is down. QuickTeller is down." And then you see him go to his like his IDE, and he'll be like, don't worry, I'm going to use Kubernetes to bring it back up. The Kibana logs is down. And then he will go to his terminal and then just start writing up some commands, and things will just be moving. And because we're sitting down together, I would oftentimes look at his laptop and I would just be so fascinated by those things he did. And in my mind, I was like, one day I would actually go into this DevOps thing, because it just felt so like so exciting. Like it felt like he was a like a hacker, so to speak, trying to do some amazing things. It would remind me of the movies that I've watched in the past, and I was like, I would do this someday. I didn't do it eventually. I probably did like maybe 2 or 3 years after that moment. That's when I transitioned to DevOps. But it was one of the things that made me say, one day I'm going to be a DevOps engineer, even though I didn't do it immediately. But I eventually did it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it absolutely looks cool on screen when you're
It
watching,
does.
like somebody SSH into the server and run like some, set up some cron job, or, trigger some cascading effect that like reboots all these different servers around the world or something. Like it looks powerful.
It does.
Especially when they're like using Vim or Emacs or something. It's all black. It's all white text on black.
Black, exactly.
Yeah,
like it's not code that you're writing on like a terminal. You're doing no. This everything is happening on a CLI. I mean, you could still do Kubernetes in the imperative approach via like the declarative rather. So there's like 2 ways to work with Kubernetes. It can either be imperative, where you're creating everything on the go on your CLI, or declarative, where you're doing it on like a YAML file and then not applying it into your Kubernetes cluster. But the exciting one for me was always the imperative approach, where you're just like, you open up your CD into a Kubernetes cluster, and then you're running kubectl commands to get your logs, to see where your like the network of your cluster is, copying the IP address, and like doing some really cool and interesting stuff. Very, very exciting.
It's a very much like, turn off the autopilot. I'll land this plane myself. Give me the sticks. That's kind of like, you just imagine like the power of being able to bring the plane in for a landing without any assistance.
It's so cool.
Yeah. So a couple of things I want to observe. First, one of the things that you said that stuck out at me is you didn't feel like you gave yourself enough time to learn. And I certainly had that experience myself. When I was learning to code, I was like, why is this so hard? This seems so effortless for these other people. And what I think a lot of people don't understand is that kid that kid across the office who's been coding since they were 10 and stuff like that, they probably had lots of setbacks and lots of difficulty. When you're a kid, you don't necessarily get frustrated like you do as an adult.
Absolutely.
And you don't necessarily even remember all the frustration with it. Like, I don't remember half my childhood. I'm sure I was, probably like really frustrated learning math and stuff like that. All I know is today I know some basic math, or like, I don't remember all the frustration of like learning irregular verbs in English. I just know how to use English now. So it's kind of that way with programming, is my theory, is like a lot of people have completely forgotten the difficulty in learning to program. And for them, it seems like effortless. And they're like, why is that person having so much trouble? Maybe they're not cut out for it, but in practice, they probably just haven't put in a lot of time and energy like you have, right? Like the person who's criticizing the newbie doesn't necessarily remember that like they have thousands of hours of coding under their belts.
Exactly. Like when you're new, it just feels like it doesn't make sense. It's not adding up. You'd oftentimes feel like you're not meant to be here. Like I know of several people who started out wanting to become a software engineer, and because they felt like it wasn't for them, they would transition to like what they felt was easier, like a different field in tech. But if you actually stick with it, that's like one amazing thing about software development. Like if you actually give it time and actually do it consistently, like there is absolutely no way you would not be able to understand. It's like it's not magic. It's just hours you put in and doing it consistently, that's what really helps you get, like, that's what makes it going, because you realize that eventually things begin to like add up, right? And one thing I would also say that I think people don't do is like people move to the end instead of the beginning, right? It's like, let's say you want to be a backend developer and then you start with learning Node.js instead of learning JavaScript first. Like, oftentimes that's one of the things that, I mean, I know that there are people who have like learned Node.js first and still understood it, and that's fine. But oftentimes that's one of the reasons why people give up quickly or feel like they are not meant to be there, because they don't start from like they don't start step by step, right? Because if you've actually learned JavaScript before doing Node.js, a lot of things will make sense to you while you're right learning Node.js. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, so I'm just doing this stuff in JavaScript, but then adding a bit of like tweaks here and there. I'm doing it more on the server side rather than the client side that you would do when you were doing like focusing on pure JavaScript itself. So I would say one of the things that I really, really would recommend for people who are like struggling to find their feet in the software development field or struggling to learn how to code is to take a step back and really focus on the fundamentals. Like, if you're learning React.js now, take a step back and say, hey, let me start with JavaScript. If you're trying to do like another, let's say, Python, and you're focusing on back end, take a step back and say, let me understand how like computers even work or networking even works on a general. Because I feel like that basic fundamental knowledge really just builds up and adds up when you take it one step at a time versus just going to the actual thing at the end.
Yeah, yeah, I'm 100% there with you. I think a lot of people just jump straight to what's the most powerful tool that can get the job done.
Yeah.
And that does bring me to a topic that I want to discuss is like, code completion tools like Cursor and, GitHub Copilot and things like that. And people essentially skipping a lot of the fundamentals, not just skipping JavaScript to go to Node, but skipping programming completely to just have GPT build their, server code for them. And based on what you just said, like, I suspect this is a leading question, but when is the right time to start reaching for those AI tools? Let's say hypothetically somebody is, they're like a first year computer science student, or they're just learning the code on their own. They're just using freeCodeCamp and other open learning resources, and they're just gradually kind of like becoming more technical while they work their day job, whether that's working at Starbucks or whether that's working at like some local law firm or something, right? What is the progression, and at what point do you think people should go ahead and like learn how to use those AI tools? And then I'm curious as to whether you make use of those yourself.
Yeah, so I think I'm definitely on the I do think that using these AI tools are great, but you need to be cautious about them and also have like a balance. It's funny because I was having this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, and then I was like, I mean, I know that AI tools are making us productive, but I fear that it would have some detrimental impact to our knowledge in a couple of years, right? Because we are slowly not doing critical thinking as much as we used to anymore. Like, oftentimes you want to build something, you want to write something. Before AI existed, you would think about those things and actually put it down and get it to where you want to be. But now, people just go to ask ChatGPT or Gemini or GitHub Copilot, whatever AI tool you're using. And while it actually helps you get there faster, I feel like over time, this is going to be detrimental to like how much critical thinking you can do or how much you're able to do by yourself without AI. So putting out that first. But to answer your question specifically, I would say that when you're learning how to code, I think you should really just focus on the learning part and not necessarily incorporating AI into your workflow just yet. And the reason why that is important, in my opinion, is that when you're learning, the one of you actually learn a lot more when you're like figuring out stuff. Like, it's one thing to say listen to a tutorial and like the tutorial is teaching you something and then you're typing out the code as well. But it is another thing to actually build something outside of that tutorial. And the truth is that this is actually where you learn the most. Like, this is where the knowledge gets reinforced the most. And while you're trying to build this stuff, you need to be very open to critical thinking. Like you need to be able to like understand why something is happening, right? So if you're using AI tools for this, my advice would be that when you, because sometimes prior to when AI tools existed, when you are not sure about something, you do like a Google search or maybe go to Stack Overflow. But now a lot of people are just asking those questions directly on this AI coding assistant. So when you do ask that question, assuming you're someone who uses AI, rather than just copy pasting like the code responses that it gives you to like your code that you're trying to implement, always take a step back and try to understand exactly what the code is saying or exactly what the code is supposed to do. So when you get that code snippet, just look through it and read it step by step. Okay, hey, this does this, this does that. And when you're done, do not copy and paste. Type it out yourself. That made such a huge difference for me. Like, there's a difference between when you're typing out, even if you're looking at it, that's okay, but literally type it out yourself versus copying and pasting. Like, it makes all of the difference.
It does make a huge difference. I want to second that. I actually had somebody email me the other day and say, hey, FreeCodeCamp should add a copy paste button to, because like a lot of times I'll be working on FreeCodeCamp and there'll be like an example code and I don't want to have to like retype all that. I just want to hit copy and paste it in. And I'm like, you're missing the point. Like there's a very clear reason why we don't have a copy and paste button on FreeCodeCamp. And it's, and like why a lot of sites like even like make it really awkward. Like we don't do anything to like make it to where you can't manually swipe and copy paste it. We've thought about doing that before, but I genuinely think there's so much value in mechanically reproducing the code with your fingertips. And building up like humans learn in weird ways. We're not computers. We don't just flash new data to our mom or whatever, right? Or like we have to actually like we have these weird kind of squids that are inside of our body that are our nervous system, and we have to like do things with them. You can't just like I can verbally explain exactly how to do like a C chord on guitar, but that doesn't mean that you're just going to pick up and do exactly what I do and have a perfect sounding C chord. There's like a lot of mechanical aspect to it too, and so anyway, without belaboring your point too much, I think it's great that you're encouraging people to actively like think critically.
Yeah.
That is not a skill that's going to go away. It's one of the superpowers of humans, like our ability to reason, our ability to solve problems. And I suspect there's a little bit of learned helplessness that is coming out where people are like, oh, but like, Cursor says to do this. I'm just going to copy what they say. I'm not sure that that's the correct way, but like, I don't feel qualified to argue back. And like, next thing you know, you've got these code bases, filled with questionable code.
Exactly. Like you need to be able to spot, because sometimes like as amazing and incredible as AIs hallucinate, right? Because they are being trained on data that are oftentimes not correct, or they just make speculations here and there. So even when Cursor or whatever AI coding assistant says it should be this, like you need to look through it and actually confirm that it's that, because sometimes they are wrong. And you see, like, you'd be like, oh, no, what you did here is wrong. And then they'll be like, yeah, you're correct. Thanks for correcting me. And then they'll send you the correct one.
Like, well, couldn't you have corrected yourself?
Exactly.
What the heck? Like, is that correct? Like, a lot of times I'll be like, that doesn't look correct. Oh, you're right. It's not correct. I'm like, okay, well.
So why did you give me the correct one?
I'm sure these tools will get better, but it is kind of like terrifying the extent to which people rely on these things.
Yeah.
Also, one thing is to note that, like, it's kind of like a median of all the code that is processed. You're never going to get like truly stellar, like S tier, top shelf, artisanal code from an LLM because it's by definition, it's like kind of muddling everything together. It's like taking all the best code on the internet and all the worst code in the internet, throwing it in a blender, and you're going to have this very mediocre code that comes out usually. And it doesn't necessarily understand your business case. And like, so you've been writing code for like 10 years at this point. Like, do you think that in general, like you can write much better code than is going to be produced by a tool like GPT?
Yeah, I would say that they do make you faster. They do give you like it's to some level. I don't think humans would ever be able to like understand things at the speed that it does. Right? It's like there are things that I now do a lot faster because I have AI with me, where I can ask them those questions. But there is still the human element to it where you can like, depending on how knowledgeable you are, you can spot out when it's making mistakes. So I think AI is amazing when you are not knowledgeable about something. Do you get, like, you're trying to get an answer to a question and then he sends it to you like, oh my god, this is so nice. But when you are knowledgeable about it, you have to always say, okay, why did you do this? Why did you not do this? So I would say that in some scenarios, yes, I would solve a code in like a different way or in a better way than AI. But then oftentimes, because of the amount of knowledge that he has, most often than not, he may think of like different scenarios or draft up things a lot faster than I would or like any human brain would. So that's why I really think it's like finding a balance. Like, I'm not for or against AI. I love AI. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's fascinating, to be honest. But we really need to have a balance. Like, don't fully rely on it. Like, don't ever reach a point where it's like, if AI tools are down, now you won't be able to like function or write code anymore. Yeah. And I fear that we are slowly getting there unconsciously. So like nowadays, I make it a conscious effort to try to solve things myself, or just say, hey, no, let me try to do this myself, versus always going to AI. Like, use it when you have to, but like my point is, don't solely depend on it, that you now lose your sense of reasoning or lose all the years you spent learning how to code because you now have this shiny, amazing thing that is just generating like ideas or code snippets for you.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. So don't abandon your own instincts as a developer and just hand everything over to the AI overlords. Yeah. You have written hundreds of tutorials. You are an extremely accomplished technical writer. You've been paid by many companies to create documentation, tutorials, all kinds of different things for like developers to use to integrate their tools and things like that. Yeah. So I think it's fair to say that you are a very capable technical writer.
Yes.
How do you feel about the kind of writing that LLMs generally generate on technical topics? Like, do you ever try to use them to get like an explanation of a technical topic? And how would you compare and contrast that with the capabilities of like the best technical writers out there?
Yeah, I would say there's like two ways to think about this. Sometimes I'm actually impressed by the way it explains things, and then other times I'm not. And like I said earlier, like LLM's capacity or capability is based off the data that they are trained on. So on some concepts or topics, they have a lot of data that they're being, like they have a lot of information, so they can make very informed decisions. But on other situations or scenarios, they do not have a lot of information, so they make biased or incorrect scenarios. But one thing I really do like about AI is that if you give it the right prompts, it would give you fascinating answers, right? So it's really a case of, can you give it the right prompts? If you can, then it will give you phenomenal answers. Versus the human aspect is more real life examples, more based on like specific use cases that they've experienced. So it gives you like maybe you do like a Google search about like a particular bug that you've encountered you've just encountered, and then there's an article written by someone who encountered the same issue, let's say some years back, and then they just give you verbatim like you need to do A, B, C to be able to do them. But with AI, when you ask or paste that error, oftentimes it does not give you a specific thing. It gives you possible scenarios that could cause that problem, right? And you now have to read between the lines to be able to solve the issue. Yeah. So in situations like that, I would go for like human versus AI. But in terms of like getting knowledge as quickly as possible, I would go for AI versus human, because AI kind of like, because again, it's trained on so much data. It gathers up everything from like different places and gives you what it believes to be the best possible knowledge, which sometimes it may be, and other times it would not be because it's hallucinating.
Okay, so maybe one way I could look at your thoughts on this is like, you might go to Wikipedia to get like an overview of a topic, but you would definitely go to an actual scholar or somebody who is an expert in the topic if it was an important topic to you. Yeah. Like, let's say you're doing like a research paper on the history of Legos. You wouldn't just stop at the Legos Wikipedia article. You'd probably go and read books written by experts about the history of Legos and then incorporate those. And Wikipedia might serve as kind of like an index and help you come up with good questions for when you're actually like things to keep in mind. So That's a very helpful way. It's kind of like a first pass, essentially.
Yeah.
And speaking of Legos, I want to talk a little bit about tips you would have, because I imagine there are lots of developers from Legos listening to the podcast. We have a pretty big listenership in Nigeria, and a shout out to them. FreeCodeCamp, the biggest kind of like part of the FreeCodeCamp community in terms of people who use FreeCodeCamp is the United States, followed by India, but I believe Nigeria is number 3, or it's frequently tied with number 3 with the UK and stuff. So it's like a lot of Nigerians in tech who would like to, work at these big tech companies like you've been doing, like you're currently at MongoDB, and also the big Nigerian tech companies. What tips would you have for them?
So, one, I would say, do not allow your environment to define you or define what you could be, right? Because when you turn around, let's say there is no power, or there is no light, or there is no internet, should not deter you from still going after your dreams. Like, a lot of people in the past have done it, so you're definitely capable of doing it. The second thing would be, I'd recommend that you try to put yourself out there. By put yourself out there, I mean share the work you're doing, teach people, publish your code snippets, or like build like open source projects, contribute to open source projects, talk about your work on like social media. And this is so important because we are really at that digital age where people get identified or get opportunities from for what they are known for. If nobody knows you're a software engineer, when they see a software engineering role, they're not going to reach out to you. Almost all of the jobs that I've had has been from someone seeing the work that I've done online and reaching out to say, hey, would like you to join this team, or from hearing my story or like my experiences and how I've worked with open source organizations or helped to build things from scratch. So when you have a career path or story that is visible or publicly seen that people could always go back and look at, it increases your advantage of landing opportunities or landing roles. I always say, like, give 2 examples of two software engineers who are knowledgeable about React.js. One of them writes technical articles about React.js on, let's say, FreeCodeCamp, and the other person doesn't. But these 2 people are just as smart. Like, they, in terms of technical knowledge, they're just as smart. The person who has his written articles has a stronger advantage over the person who doesn't, because a recruiter can do a quick Google search and see the content that they have out there and see how they're expressing themselves or see how they are teaching other people. So putting yourself out there is very, very important. The third and final one is give yourself time. Like, you might feel like everybody knows a lot and you want to be there. Always remember that every single person that you're seeing today who is your inspiration was in your shoes someday, like in the past. And they had to give themselves like time, do their work consistently, be very patient with themselves to get to this point. So don't try to move faster than your shadow, so to speak. Just be consistent and put in the work. And eventually, it may not happen tomorrow or next tomorrow, but eventually, if you stay focused on your work and be committed, you're definitely going to have a thriving career. Like, every single person that I've seen that has been focused and patient and consistent is doing really well in their career today. So it would be you having this call or this podcast with Quincy sometime in the future.
Yeah, awesome. So just to recap, being visible, working in public, making sure people know that you contribute to open source, making sure people know that you're a strong engineer, and not being shy about it, not presuming that people are going to dig in and find it. Like, I think a lot of people are modest. They're like, oh, well, I don't want to come across as immodest. But unfortunately, the way that, the labor market works, certainly today, like, people are super busy. They're super distracted. You have to be very explicit about what you do. And you have to really, like, not try to minimize your accomplishments or anything.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm from the generation of Americans where it's cool to, like, be aloof and to not be boastful or anything like that. And that, like, is a tendency that I grew up with, but I'm as time goes on, I'm just seeing it's less and less useful. And these younger people who don't really care that much about seeming like like they're flaunting their skills or they're flaunting like their accomplishments or anything like that. They're the ones that are out there like getting people's attention.
Absolutely, getting the opportunities and the money.
Yeah, and playing it cool may not be a great operate. Like, I think previously when it was just like villages and stuff like that, and it wasn't a giant global community of like 8 billion people competing for other people's attention, you wouldn't. It would probably be a suboptimal strategy to be boastful. You go to the town tavern and there'd be that one guy that won't shut up about how smart he is and everything like that. And everybody like, I can't stand that guy. But to some extent, like that's what you need to do today. Like you do need to like be much more vocal about your accomplishments.
Absolutely.
So I definitely see the merit in that. I just want to close with one final question. If you could send some advice back to yourself, Didi, like if you could basically say something that you think would help your 18, 19-year-old self when you were like considering going to medical school, when you were just getting into computer science and you weren't sure if you were cut out for it, it was frustrating, it was hard. Like what would you say to yourself that would maybe make your life a little bit easier?
That's such a interesting question. I think what I would say to myself is there is absolutely nothing I cannot do if I put my mind and do it consistently, because like every other person or most people, there are times where I've wanted to make certain moves or do certain things, but I would just let fear overwhelm me so much that I don't actually give it a shot. Like it would almost feel like I'm dealing with analysis paralysis, where just the thought of the thing you want to do is overwhelming you more than the actual thing. So I would tell myself that it feels that way because I don't know yet, right? It feels that way because I'm brave enough to try something new. I'm brave enough to be a beginner in something new. But if I do this thing consistently, then I can do it. Like my concept for life is, which is something I learned eventually, was if I could learn Android development, right? Then if I decide that I want to switch to Kubernetes, then I can actually also learn how to do it, because there was a time in my life where I knew absolutely nothing about Android development. So if I could move from that point of knowing nothing to knowing Android development, then there is absolutely nothing I cannot learn, right? All I just need to do is put the work, because nothing good comes easy. There is no shortcut to understanding how to code or to having a great career. You need to put in the work. You need to be consistent as well, and you need to believe in yourself. You have to be your biggest cheerleader.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you so much for everything you're doing for the global developer community, through your open source contributions, through the many writings you've shared on like the technical tutorials. Thanks for, of course, publishing some articles on the FreeCodeCamp publication.
My pleasure.
You're a big inspiration for a lot of people who are getting into tech. And I feel proud to have brought you on, and I've been a long time admirer, and I'm thrilled to finally kind of like share a lot of your insights as widely as I can.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. FreeCodeCamp has been a fundamental part of my career, so it's such a full circle moment for me to be having this conversation with you. And I also just want to, I know you hear this a lot, but I also just want to say thank you to you too for being brave enough to create such an incredible resource that is free, when the world is filled with people who just want to like make money and get out of like just make money and leave. But you don't just create like the free content. You really care about people and care about trying to make the lives of people better. And I think that's such a noble and fantastic thing. So thank you so much for all you do.
Well, thank you so much. That means so much to me, Didi. Well, everybody tuning in, until next week, happy coding.
All right, bye.